Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. NCP leader and outgoing Heavy Industries Minister Praful Patel says Congress didn't consult his party or heed its advice. He also accepts Dr. Manmohan Singh was a weak Prime Minister who lacked leadership quality. That's the big interview in part 2 tonight. But first, what are India's top industrialists hoping from Narendra Modi? If the new Prime Minister is going to revive the economy, he needs to listen to their demands. And now joining me are four of India's top industrialists. They are the chairman of the Hindustan Construction Company, Ajit Gulabchand, the president of CII, Ajay Sriram, the joint managing director of Hero Motocorp, Sunil Munjal, and the chairman of Max Healthcare as well as Vodafone India, Analjit Singh. Analjit Singh, let me start with a simple question. Given his track record in Gujarat and the emphasis he lays on good governance, will the very fact of Mr. Modi's sweeping victory make a significant difference to the investment and industrial climate in the country?
Oh, definitely, Karan. I think it goes without saying that the mandate has sort of said, like Elvis Presley said, it's now or never. Mr. Modi, come hold India tight. So this is an opportunity not to be missed. I'm personally looking forward to Mr. Modi using these few days to rehearse and be prepared so that as soon as he's taken oath, in matter of hours or at the very latest the next morning, he announces his cabinet. I also hope that he does not compromise at all on picking his top team, his top 5 ministers, his top 10 bureaucrats, and gets on with business very, very quickly, understanding the sentiment of within the country and outside the country. So there are certain tangibles to fix, and I think there he will understand tangibles to fix.
Oh, we seem to
clearly some opportunities and low-hanging fruit to fix those.
All right. Ajit Gulabchand, beyond Narendra Modi's personality, how much of a difference will things like faster decision-making, speedier clearances and less red tape make? In other words, can good governance alone make a sizable difference to changing the industrial and investment climate in the country?
Well, certainly, Karan, the man has the desire, the capacity and the will to ensure that what he has promised he would like to deliver, and he will do that. He has a huge task ahead of him. The havoc and the damage that the Sonia Gandhi-led government has wreaked on the economy of this country on one side, and the huge agenda of providing 300 million jobs in the next 20 years. All this has to be achieved in a short span, has to begin to achieve as quickly as possible. So his task is really very challenging, and the list of things he needs to do is long. But I'm quite confident that the man has, as I said earlier, the desire, the capacity and the will to do it.
Okay. Now, Ajay Sriram, the BJP manifesto lays a lot of stress on infrastructure. They're talking about 100 new cities, bulletproof trains, a reinvigorated program of highways, gas grids, optical fiber networks, public Wi-Fi zones. How critical would just those infrastructure programs be to reviving the industrial climate?
I think, Karan, infrastructure is absolutely crucial. At the end of the day, this is the foundation, this is the base, based on which economic activity and growth can happen. And I think the need for India is immense. Based on studies done so far, they estimate the investment should be in the range of $1 trillion over the next 5 to 7 years. Now, the critical point is the money has to come from the government and from private sector, which means we have to have public-private partnership projects which have to operate well. And till date, our experience on that is mixed. So I think it's very important to look at all the PPP projects till date, see how they can be sorted out so they become productive, learn from other countries where PPP projects have worked well.
Okay.
But I think setting up infrastructure rapidly, quickly, within time bound, limits is crucial for economic growth.
Now, Sunil Munjal has just joined us. Sunil Munjal, we're still talking about the general atmosphere that Mr. Modi's sweeping victory has created and how much of an impact that alone will have on the industrial and investment climate. I'll come to specifics in a moment's time. Do you believe that the mere fact that a man like Mr. Modi with his track record in Gujarat has come to power with this sizable majority just on his own within the BJP, leave aside his allies, means that the industrial climate will itself change? What then happens in terms of reforms will be an add-on and an extra?
I think so, Karan. Because don't forget, industry recognizes the potential of growth and consumption in India, but investment was held back partially because of the global slowdown and partially because of the situation in India. We have blamed government for not taking decisions. We've blamed government for taking action, taking decisions and then rolling them back. So just the sense that we have a leader in government today who will take decisions, who will take tough decisions, and he will take forward-looking decisions, has actually made the situation quite euphoric right now.
Let's then come to specifics. And Anurjit Singh, let me begin with something that you've been advocating when you wear your chairman of Vodafone hat. You've often pointed out that that one decision of retrospective amendment didn't just upset a major company like Vodafone, but in fact it had a deleterious effect across the board on international FDI. Do you believe that Mr. Modi, with this enormous majority of 282 just within the BJP, needs to reverse that one step? And if he were to bite that bullet and reverse the step, would it have a big impact on how industrial investors view India?
Karan, honestly, keeping my personal position and interest aside, it was incorrectly titled the Vodafone problem. It's not a Vodafone problem. And quite frankly, no matter where that verdict goes, it will neither make Vodafone or break Vodafone. But it is an India problem, and it did break the back of India. It created such poor sentiment abroad and within India that, trust me if I told you, that it was the #1 asked question, not a frequently asked question, but sometimes the only asked question about India losing the title of being a rule of law country and so on and so forth. So I believe this is about the quickest and lowest hanging fruit there is in front of Mr. Modi to rescind, repeal, repair, sit across the table and sort that out. I think it will give a huge message across the board within and outside the country.
Ajit Gulabchand, many industrialists also complain about the UPA's land acquisition bill. They say that that one measure not only made the acquisition of land extremely expensive, but even worse, it made it extremely cumbersome, if not outrightly difficult. Do you believe that this is a second UPA measure that Mr. Modi must reverse and repeal if he's serious about encouraging investment?
You are being very kind when you say this made more difficult. It is impossible. You can write off any development if land acquisition bill in its present form is continued to be implemented. This has to be reviewed and redone, scrapped if necessary.
So in other words, this is a second bullet that you would like Mr. Modi to bite, and to bite very quickly. And since he has a majority of 282 within his party, he should have no difficulty doing it. Is that also a correct interpretation of your views, Ajit Gulabchand?
Well, as I told you, he has the will, the desire and the capacity. Now, there are some issues that are far more urgent than that. Like the Vodafone issue which Anilji talked about. But it is not enough to just reverse Vodafone, but assure the investor in India and abroad that no retrospective laws will be passed. Because what you do today can't be made wrong tomorrow.
Okay.
And I think this is extremely important. Number two, there is, in the area of infrastructure, there's a huge non-payment by government entities and departments to the infrastructure industry and the service providers like construction industry. Almost 1,50,000 crores is owed to them and has not been paid under some circumstance or the other and disputed in arbitration in courts all the way to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
he has to find a way to make that payment as early as possible and find some system by which immediate relief is granted to industry that will strengthen the companies and the banks that have funded them.
Or at the moment, we're talking about things that Mr. Modi needs to do to correct the mistakes of UPA, to repeal laws that UPA brought about which have been deleterious. But Ajay Sriram, there is, some people say, something the BJP itself is committed to, which perhaps Mr. Modi needs to find a way of uncommitting himself from. And that is the decision and determination to reverse FDI in retail. Do you think it's important that when he becomes Prime Minister on Monday, he should find effectively and quickly a way of continuing with the UPA's permission for FDI in retail and move away from his original position of reversing it?
I think it's a very valid question, Karan. I think the issue of FDI, let's not look at it, in general I'm saying, let's not look at it as only money flows. I think the very important part of FDI is technology, is know-how, is experience. So why do we want to reinvent the wheel? Coming into FDI and multi-brand retail, which is the controversial issue right now, frankly, if large Indian corporates can do it, are permitted to do it, and they are spending billions of dollars setting up multi-brand retail in India, why not get someone from outside who's doing it on a similar scale with experience, know-how and technology? I think, and frankly speaking, our studies have shown that FDI and multi-brand retail will benefit the farmers, will benefit the consumer, and will create employment and jobs. I think this needs to be done.
Sunil Munjal, we're talking at the moment about two measures that at least Mr. Modi needs to correct, and these are measures taken by the UPA. One was the whole retrospective amendment of taxation, the other was the land acquisition bill, and then thirdly we're talking about giving up a commitment that his party has dearly held for the last year, which is reversing permission for FDI in retail. These are not just economic measures. At the end of the day, they're going to have to be political decisions. He has the numbers to take the political decisions, but do you believe he'll actually bite that bullet, or will he shy away from doing so? It's a question of will and gut, isn't it?
First, before answering a question, Karan, I just want to add some color to your earlier comment on the land acquisition bill. This bill increases the time to acquire land by 3 to 5 years and increases the cost of land by 4 to 6 times. So I hope somebody can understand the implication of that, which is why Ajit is saying it's impossible to acquire land for large industry any longer. To your second question, I think the government has made it very plain that they have been voted by everybody, not just by a few people, not just by cities. They will be conscious that any announcements they make, any policy they announce, must be relevant to the population at large, especially the disadvantaged and the poor. So I think they would like to see a connection in allowing FDI in retail, etc., to benefit the common man before they make the changes. There are other changes they need to make too, like they had resisted the introduction of GST. While they acknowledge that it's good for the economy, it's good for the country, it's good for industry and for the consumer.
Quite right. You're making a very good point.
There are clearly things that they need to look at themselves.
You're making a very good point. Whilst there are huge expectations and there are certainly things that Mr. Modi needs to do, like reverse bad decisions and perhaps give up some of his own bad commitments, he is at the end of the day a politician, and a politician needs to look beyond just industry to the wider country. Let me, in that light then, Aniljeet Singh, raise with you the hopes people have of reforms. Because there are many reforms that UPA promised but didn't deliver, and others that it never even considered. And now with his 282 BJP MPs alone, people are looking to Mr. Modi to see whether he'll do those. To begin with, what are the sort of reforms you are hoping for which Mr. Modi with his strength can deliver? Is GST and DTC at the top of that list, and are there more?
Karan, firstly, just a small clarification. Nobody is questioning the right of the sovereign to make any kind of amendment. The point about the taxation matter was that it should not be retrospective. It can be prospective. Nobody is arguing with that. That is the country's right, and so be it. But it is the retrospective nature and that we're referring to. One.
That's a taken point.
I think pretty much the... number one. Number two, I think all these points, DTC, GST, the one that Gulab mentioned about the Land Acquisition Act, etc., these are the quick wins that Mr. Modi has in front of him. He said reportedly once that one of his first tasks is to repair and restore the faith and confidence about India, within India and outside India. These sorts of announcements and pronouncements have a lot of distance in them. They have a lot of power in them.
Okay.
It will take time to get the house in order, but these are the few things that we can do. I think this is the agenda pretty much.
Let's come, Ajit Gulab Chand, to some things that may be a little more difficult, but which many people believe are equally essential. For instance, do you think Mr. Modi with his majority needs to tackle subsidies? I'm talking primarily about the amount of money that's spent on diesel, LPG, kerosene and fertilizer, because if those subsidies are not tackled, then you're going to find that your fiscal deficit is never reined in, and the cumulative fiscal deficit of India, states and centre included, is huge. So do you think he needs to bite the subsidy bullet?
No, I think you're asking the wrong question. The question before India, as he sees it, it has to create 300 million jobs in 20 years. United States today employs at the best, if you take the biggest figures, about 140 million people, which means we have to create two American-sized economy in the next 20 years in order to create that many jobs. This is an enormous task, and everything has to be directed towards making that happen, because those people are real, they are already born, and they're going to come into the job market. So from that point of view, it requires investment, it requires ease of doing business, and it requires employable people. So he's going to focus on all these three things. So when he talks of an investment climate, he talks of an investment climate for the multinational, the large companies, and even the small telawalas, a small rickshawalas, a small farmer. So we are discussing an investment. So he will do what it takes to create that investment climate.
All right.
Then ease of doing business, the amount of obstacles we have. Our construction permits, out of 183 countries, we rank 182nd in the worst country in the world. Ease of doing business, we are 134th.
Okay.
These are the things that he has to tackle in order to make investment happen, both domestic as well as foreign. And I think that is what he will focus on.
Let me put to you, Ajay Sriram, the question that in fact Ajit Gulab Chand didn't answer, and add to it another one. I want to ask you, how important in your eyes is Mr. Modi's ability and determination to tackle subsidies, and I mean diesel, LPG, kerosene, fertilizer in particular? And I'll add to that, how important would it be for him to also bite the bullet of labour law reform? His manifesto commits him to doing it, but a commitment in the manifesto is one thing, actually doing it in theory and practice is quite another, because it's a very difficult bullet to bite. Now, how important are these two, subsidies and labour law reform?
I think very important, Karan, very important indeed. See, I think as a country, we have to accept that subsidies are required for people who deserve them. This is given all over the world. Just for information, the USA and the OECD countries give over $1 billion a day as subsidy for agriculture. So I think in India, we need to give the subsidies. But the issue is, how do we target it correctly to give it to people who deserve it? I think there was an example which was done by the previous government in the area, in a district in Alwar, where instead of giving kerosene at a discounted price, they gave money in the bank accounts of people in a particular area, and kerosene was given at full price and they could buy it, and the reduction in the government spend came down by 40%.
What about labour law reform?
So I think that's second on labour laws. I think frankly, unfortunately, the labour laws, the orientation is to make it more populist, which makes it anti-labor. You know, I'll be honest, today in corporates and companies, people say, let's spend 5 lakhs, 7 lakhs, 10 lakhs to put a machine, but not get another person. I think we have to move with a sense of responsibility with the employer and the employee, so that it's a win-win situation. And we also have to provide a system that if a company wants to close down because of not being able to survive, which is very possible in a competitive world, there must be a social security system for the people displaced, so that they can get some income and time to find another job.
Okay.
So I think we require labor law changes to make it a win-win for all.
Sunil Munjal, we're running out of time, but I want to ask you one small, critical, sharply focused question. For many people, the first indication of how serious Mr. Modi is about this whole gamut of issues that we've discussed will be his choice of finance minister. The speculation is, of course, between two individuals, Arun Jaitley and Arun Shourie. To industrialists, does it matter which of the two gets the job?
Yes, it does actually, because the finance ministry is an important one. It has a direct interface with the entire economy and certainly a lot with the industry. One of the keys for the success of the economy in India is going to be fiscal consolidation, and that would depend on the ability and the vision of the finance minister. So it would make a difference who comes into this position.
And of the two, which is your preference, Jaitley or Shourie?
At this moment, I think industry has said very clearly that Mr. Jaitley has shown a lot of wherewithal to understand economic issues. Mr. Shourie has been there earlier in the disinvestment ministry, but not in any of the financial ministries. So I'm not sure of his ability or capability on this front.
All right.
But Mr. Arun Jaitley has certainly demonstrated this.
All right. Quite clearly, your answers suggest that you would prefer Arun Jaitley. We're going to have to end this particular discussion there. My thanks to all four of my guests for joining me. We now have to only wait till Monday to see how much of what we've discussed begins to happen from Monday evening, 6 p.m. onwards, when in fact, Mr. Modi is sworn in. My thanks to all four of you for joining me.